was raised by like women, incredible women. Like my mom, she had a high position back home for some time in the government, and now she runs her own school. And then my sisters are also pretty amazing. They're both have like great careers. They taught me a lot of things as well. Um, and then, but I would see how guys impact them. And then, like my father, for example, he's a big role model for me. I think he's an amazing person. He always tries to do better, which I really admire. And I think it's the biggest lesson he's taught me is it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to want to be better. But I know how, because he's a man and because of where he was born and the time he was born, there's some things that he doesn't quite understand. And because he was the main male role model in my life, and then his assistant was my second role model, who's like a big brother to me. And I saw their relationships with women, and I saw that these are amazing guys, and they're kind people, and even in their friendship and as fathers, they're amazing people as well. But there's still so many things that as men that they don't understand how it affects other women. And I'm lucky enough that having sisters, and most of my friends, my close friends were girls for a long time. I got to hear their conversations. You know, I feel like I think it's the same thing as like when you're black and you're in a white space. You have an experience, and then if a white person, for whatever reason, or a person of a different color, got to hang out just with black people, they would see that, oh wait, there's things that they in when they're together and they feel safe that they talk about and they share that they wouldn't when they're in another space because they don't feel safe enough to do that. And I think the same thing applies for men with women. I think when women are in their space and it's just one guy and it's with them all the time, we build that trust and they're able to say, hey, you know what, like I have this issue and these problems, and they started realizing how much of the things that they talked about, how I did, for example. And I thought I was a good person. I mean, I think I'm a good person. But how, like, because I wasn't aware of it or it wasn't spoken to me in a way that I understood, I I wasn't doing enough. And I think that a lot of guys are in that situation where we don't know, or we're unaware, or we're unmotivated really. There's no reason to change. And then so we keep doing things the way that we do.
Would you say there was an aha moment that you said, like, now I understand? Or was it progressive, like experience to experience, group to group?
I think it's progressive. I think so. I'd say my earliest friendship when I started my with my best friends group. It was when I was 12 years old, and we've been friends and best friends ever since. There's still moments where I'm like, oh, you know. I think one big moment was a year ago in class, where I was for the first time in my life, I was the only guy in a whole class for my graduate degree, and I noticed how, for example, women were talking about periods, and I always say this story because for me this was a big light bulb moment for me, where they would be talking about it, and like again, it's all women. I'm the only guy, and they'd get into the classroom and they'd be talking about it, and they'd be like, "Ah, it's so painful, and I feel like this in my stomach," and they were like very descriptive, and then they realized that I was there, and like they stopped and they're like, "Oh, sorry," and I'm talking about women with like built careers. I was the youngest person in the room. They have like amazing careers. One of them is a consultant, has a TED talk. The other one, she's traveled all over the world. She's a big feminist. And still these women felt like it was necessary to accommodate me while I was there. And that's when I realized, oh, wait, I still hold so much privilege as a guy. And I was like, hey, like, guys, talk about it. Like, every woman goes through this. And I think it's important for men to be part of the conversation too. And it took a few times, but it got to a point where they started talking about it. And when they talked freely about it, there were things that like I had never heard about before. And it made me realize, for example, just how that simple thing, something that happens every month, um, it's still pushed away because guys, for whatever reason, were uncomfortable with it.
So you're getting all of these perspectives by being exposed to a group of women or to a specific woman, right?
Yeah,
Your mom
yeah.
and your sisters and your friends, but yet I know that you were a soccer player. How were you exposed to that group and yet having these perspectives since before getting to that group? Like, how did you struggle, or how did you manage to be in between those two?
Yeah, I think I think I know that when I was younger, I used to really feel uncomfortable. I remember, so we most of my friends come from soccer and playing sports, and I remember after games or after soccer practice, I'd go home with a group of friends because we lived outside of the city, and they would be talking about girls or like saying like catcalling girls around the street and things like that. And I remember being very uncomfortable with it, but not having the language or not understanding why I felt uncomfortable. And so I wouldn't participate for the most part. Yeah, I wouldn't participate, but I'd be quiet. And that's when I was a teenager. And I remember when I was a little bit young, I think 11 or 12, and I was hanging out with my older cousins. And I remember being on the street on a block, and then it's a group of guys, and we would all like see who could come up with the best pickup line, right? And then so a girl would come by, and then a guy would say something, and then they would see the response, and another girl would come by, and another guy would say something. And and I remember I didn't spoke because one, I was uncomfortable, but two, because I really didn't have pickup lines. so then so then I just observe, and that was the culture. And then going to high school and college, seeing the same thing of guys and talking about girls like that, I've always been a little bit uncomfortable. And then there were times where I think that when I was comfortable, I would participate in a different way where I wouldn't necessarily catcall girls, but I wouldn't really think about how girls felt. I remember we had like conferences or meetings. I remember one specific, it was for like sports for athletes. And it was this woman, and she came from New York, and she came to talk about, I think it was sexual assault in college campuses, and self-image and all these things. And I remember my teammates were making jokes, and in front of us was the swimmers were sitting in front of us, and I was good friends with a lot of them. And then they texted me later. They said, "Hey, some of your teammates were making these jokes about sexual assault and about women and about women's bodies." And they were like, "We're telling you because we feel like we can talk to you about it, and you're not gonna take it the wrong way, and maybe you can talk to them." And I remember I sent a text in a group chat where I told the guys, "Hey, like, I understand that maybe you guys just mean it as a joke and you don't believe in these things, but making these jokes have certain implications, and women go through a lot of things, and we need to really be mindful and aware of that, and change our approach." And one of them, I remember, he replied, he was very like chilled about it, like, "Oh no, dude, it was just jokes. We didn't mean to cause any harm." So, and then that was it. And then the next day, one of my close friends from the team, he texted me, and he was like, "Hey, can we have a talk?" And then we talked, and he was like, "You can't censor the team. You can't censor us like this, because these guys are gonna shut you out if you come up as somebody that doesn't let them express themselves and be who they are." So I mean, even in thinking about police brutality and what's happening in the United States in the police culture, I think the same thing happens with guys, where even if guys believe in something and guys want to stop this culture, we're very afraid, because if you speak something, if you say something, um, there's going to be consequences from your friends.
Would you call your silence a mistake?
Yeah, I think I think so, because being black, I think, helps me a lot, because I know what it's like to feel injustice and see people being quiet about it, and how that makes me feel, and how it makes me question my humanity and all that I am. So I think that obviously I carry the same sentiment with towards women, and I think that my silence is a mistake. What I'm trying to do and I'm trying to learn is, what is the best way to speak up, because I think that there's two ways. You can be that confrontational person that whenever something happens, you speak out, you're loud about it, and nobody receives your message. They know what you believe in. Maybe this particular situation has a better outcome, but then your relationship with that group is cut off completely. and then you don't change their minds. You just stop them from doing one thing, and they're gonna go and do it again somewhere else. And I think that group, the people that are like that, I think they serve a purpose. And I think that if you're like that and you identify with that, great, go for it. But I'm not. So I believe in more building relationships and finding strategic ways to change the person's heart and not just their actions. Because if you stop their action today, when they have an opportunity to do it again, they'll do it. But if you really change how they think, I feel that that has a longer impact. And we need both. We need both. We need somebody that's loud and does all the talking and it's confrontational. And then we need the people that are more like, hey, I get it where you're coming from. This is why this is a problem. And kind of like baby them through it. It takes more work. And I don't think it's everybody's job. I think as a guy with my privilege, I can do that. So then I try to have that approach. I think the world works according to certain rules, and I think that you can change the rules, but until you get to those changes, you have to play by those rules. And one of the things that I noticed is, so guys value success, so financial success. They value good looks and athleticism, and then we value popularity and also like ability to seduce or women, ability to talk to women. So these are things that guys value. And if guys see a guy that do that, very often they hold this guy to a higher standard, a high regard. This guy's a role model. And I think that I've been in situations where I've been that role model of like, I always played sports. I think my experience with sports in the United States was a little bit different. But even then, there were people, because I was like on a soccer team, they looked at me and they're like, "Oh, this guy like has got it figured out." I think my grades are usually okay, but many guys don't really care about that stuff. But my grades have always been okay. I don't think I'm bad looking, and like to be humble, but I think I'm typically considered good looking as well. So then when I talk about these things, people aren't like, "Hey, this system doesn't work for Cesar, so Cesar's being a crybaby about it or he's complaining about it." It's more like, "Hey, this system works for Cesar. I've seen Cesar use the system. I've seen him be successful out of it, and it benefiting him, and still he says there's something wrong with it." And because he's someone that I know has done these things like I do, I've seen Cesar talking to women. I've seen Cesar not be the best role model that we're talking about these days. I know that this is honest, and that when I'm talking, I'm not saying, "Hey, you are a sexist or a bigot or whatever." I'm saying, "Hey, I've been there too. I still do some of the stuff today. And I'm not judging you. I'm just hoping you see that there is a better way." And in doing this, women or whoever we're talking about, they're not the only ones to benefit from it, but you yourself benefit from this way of living with compassion and empathy and understanding other people's struggles and really just doing the right thing.
What would you say is that keeps you so open shell to receive and to give?
So I don't. I believe in focus on the message and not the messenger. The messenger, yes, is important, but I think the message is more important. So I think that if I hear something more than once, then it definitely means that there's something to it. Obviously, I appreciate how it's told me, how somebody speaks to me. So if somebody comes to me and tells me, "Hey," in a gentle way, I'm more likely to respond by being gentle. Or if it's something that they speak to me and I'm in a neutral mood, I'm typically able to just filter it out and try to understand what they're saying. But there are times when people say stuff to me that I don't like how they say it, and it makes me upset or makes me feel defensive. And depending on how they say it, I might argue back or fight back. But then after that conversation, I always go and I sit and I reflect. And I even talk to somebody else about it. I'm like, "Hey, so-and-so just told me this. What do you think, or what do you see?" And I have friends in my life that are honest enough to say, "Yeah, no, you messed up." Or to say, "No, this person is a little bit, was exaggerating," or they're too, like, maybe both of you made a good point.
How do you identify or de-identify with your body, with your gender, with your color skin, with your culture, even your roots as from Mozambique and not an African American, right?
I think that I'm very fortunate because I feel as I'm seen for the most part. I think that in terms of my personality and the things that I'm interested in, especially in high school, I struggled a lot with that because so I identify as a black male and identify I'm heterosexual, and so those two things made it easy for me to an extent because my sexuality is never challenged, and I'm also I'm comfortable enough in my sexuality that um, when I do certain things that my friends that don't understand or guys will say, "Oh, uh, quote unquote, that's gay," or "You're not a real man." I'm comfortable enough in my sexuality to know, no, I know for sure what I'm into and what I believe in. So even if you try to challenge that by saying that my action doesn't reflect that, I know that you're wrong, and that helps me a lot being confident in talking about these issues. For example, no guy can come tell me that oh, I talk about women or about empowering women because I'm attracted to men, and because I know that I'm not attracted to men even if I tried, and I think that confidence helps me be able to have these conversations and be honest. But I will say that being a black and from Mozambique, when I was a teenager, I was interested. I really enjoy like rock music, heavy metal, and punk rock. And I know that a lot of my friends judge me for it. I had a group of friends that we all listened to it and we enjoyed it, but they were either mixed and or white, and because of that, my friends, especially my black friends, would say that I was trying to be white because I listened to those things. And ironically, those are the same people that today they're talking about diversity and all of these things. And one of the loudest voices as well in pushing back against people that don't understand either fluidity or don't understand feminism, don't understand racism. They're the first ones to speak loud and really just judge these people. When I remember a time when they were judging me and saying that being black meant something else. And for me, that helped me with my empathy of saying, hey, none of us are perfect and we're all still learning, and things that I didn't know or I was a victim of many years ago. Maybe I'm no longer a victim today. And because I'm empowered, I should extend the same courtesy or empathy that I wanted from people when I was in that position.
You have built not only a connection, but you have seen them, right?
Yeah.
You have seen, you have given yourself the opportunity, and you have given them the opportunity to see beyond that shell,
Yeah.
which I'm calling color, skin, gender, whatever, right? So I think, I don't know if you, that's the same position for you as
Mhm.
sharing with females so often, with white people so often, with Asian, with Latinos, with this and that. That's all that opens up not only your heart but the other people to, hey, he knows, he has experienced, he has heard, he has seen.
I think it's important to understand context, and what I'm becoming more aware of is context, and I think that historical and social context. And so, for example, um, depending on where I am, but I have a lot of my relationships were or are with white women, and to me it feels more circumstantial, as in I was in Indiana for 4 years. Majority of the population was white. The groups that I interacted with was white, and then I'm more likely to date a white woman. And also bringing in the context of like when I was younger, because when I was younger and I was told not hip hop, rock music, indie music, punk rock, um, that you get from that's for white people. So then when I was hanging out with my white friends or my white and with white women, you could talk about those things. I could talk about an indie song or music, and that's honestly that's how I used to connect with people, was music. And so being able to talk about those music, talk about like Ingrid Michaelson, Birdie, like indie artists that my black friends didn't listen to, and that built a very strong connection. And even remember some of those girls we still talk today because of that, and how we really got close with sharing music. And but coming to the United States and then being in college and understanding that there are there's more to it than that. There are layers. So as a black guy, for example, I might feel, or in college I felt that white women were more forward, and they were more, they would tell me that they were interested in me, you know. And I think that going back to the idea of identity, I think me being considered handsome and athletic and being in sports, a lot of the time people thought that I was cocky or overconfident, and they felt that I would chase women and get women whenever I wanted. When it was the opposite. Very often, girls would reach out to me and they would talk to me, and all I did was I was able to hold a conversation and build a connection. It's really what I usually do, is I build a connection with that, and then that's how my relationship started. So it would on a on the surface it looked like, hey, Cesar, why are you only dating white women in college? Is it because media paints white women as something, or as beauty, and it paints black women as something else? Um, uh, and I felt like, no, it's really just as we connect on these things because, one, they approach me first. I rarely go out towards to someone. They approach me first. Two, we connect on these things. But then I learned, because of the social context and historical context, as a black male, or even as a male in general, if we're interested in a black woman, we do need to be more intentional, because the way black women are raised or what they're told by society is different from a white woman. A white woman is told, you can go for anything, go fight for it, go get it. You know, you can be with any man. You can, you are beautiful, you are entitled, you're all of these things. When a black woman, it's completely different. You know, yes, we're starting to celebrate them more right now. And yes, we have all these amazing black women figures out there, but still, it takes more from a black girl to reach out and to be vulnerable and to expose herself, because society tells her and has shown more likely, more often than white women, they're going to be rejected. So if I'm a guy, and as a guy, I'm interested in a black woman, I don't know this. I see this girl, maybe she's giving me a sign that she's interested, but she's really reserving herself because she's scared of getting hurt. When this white woman, she feels more empowered to come after me, then obviously we're going to click first, and we're going to invest in this relationship because our system or our culture makes it easier for that. So I think that context is very important, because when you know context as well, it empowers you to make better decisions, but it also makes you understand how you think and why you do what you do. And I think that also having context and having the language to express these things makes these conversations better, because it could seem like, oh, this dude, he just wants to date, or Mariela or Cesar, they just want to date people of a certain color, of a certain race. But no, there are more layers to it as to why that happens.
This is mind blowing for me.
Yeah, and again, I'm still learning. These are things that I'm still learning.
How do you think you have made it to build upon these experiences and perspectives of very different people instead of being hardened by them?
Think of two things. The one part is I'm Christian. I don't like advertise it all the time, but I am. And I think that something that's always in me is like trying to be more like Jesus, you know, and learning, having compassion and empathy for other people. And that whole idea of like, what would Jesus do? As cliche as it sounds, I try to think of those things. And one of the prayers, especially with everything that's happening right now, that I do is, or that I have is, asking God to make my heart softer, or soften my heart rather than harden it from my hardships. Because I think that when you go through an experience, you have two choices. Either you become, well, choices, but two things could happen. One thing is you can become hardened so that you can defend yourself and protect yourself from it happening again. Or the other thing is you can it can help you become more empathetic and think, if I'm going through this, I wonder how other people that go through this might feel. And sometimes some people are really good at doing both. I'm trying to do both, of like, when I go through the experience, how do I protect myself, but still keep my heart open to helping others. The other thing is, I think it's because I'm in the United States. And so I think that when I was in Mozambique, I carried a privilege that when I came here, it kind of disappeared. And, but then it made me aware of my privileges. And I always think to myself, you know, whether it's going back home to bring change, whether it's talking about women's issues, is if I'm somebody that's empathetic and somebody that has a bit of understanding of this or an experience with it, if I choose not to do something about it, if I choose not to fight for this, why would anyone choose to do so? Why would somebody that has either the power or the privilege to do something about this but doesn't understand, why would they do something about it? Or how can I expect them to do something about it if I don't do it? And why would somebody that goes through all of these things and doesn't have the power to do it, when they get power one day, why would they want to be fair or do this or why would I expect that from them if from myself I don't expect it? So I try to expect things from myself first so that I can hold others accountable. You know, I can point out to a politician or celebrity and say, how dare you be racist? How dare you not talk about women? How dare you not do these things? And then I don't do it with myself, with my privilege, with situations in my life that I know that I can have an impact, and I'm quiet about it and I just focus on myself. So I think that those are the things that guide me of, I need to use all the power that I have to do good, because one day, or my child or myself, and I know my dad could be in a completely different situation, and we would have wanted, or we would want people to fight for us too. And I think that that's kind of like what keeps me going. And occasionally I think like life and God gives me a little reminder of like what it's like to struggle through things and why it's important. And while it's happening, reminding me, hey, don't let this harden your heart. Let this be a reminder, if you're ever in a position of power, to fight for what is right and for those that can fight for themselves.
Thank you, Cez.
Of course, thank you. It was a great, I think it's also nice talking to you about it because it helps me reflect a little bit. The wise man learns from his mistakes. The ignorant man doesn't learn from his mistakes, and the wisest man learns from others' mistakes. And I think that's what I try to live by. I always try, and I understand, especially with like our generation, we hear a lot. You need to make your own mistakes, and you need to. That's the only way you're gonna learn. I say, man, I think every time I learn from somebody else's mistakes, saves me a lot of heartache and trouble. So I really try to learn from others' experiences, and then just carry that over to my life, and then make myself a better person.